Everyone has a favorite deck, and we all have our reasons. And I'm no different. It's just that my deck is awful. Yep, my favorite deck is Eosmon, arguably one of the worst decks of all time. But why? Well, that's what I want to showcase today and ask the question, can you love a terrible Digimon deck? Eosmon is one of the first archetypal decks in the Digimon card game. Making its debut in BT06 Double Diamond, its strategy focuses on playing out tamers for free and gaining huge advantages for playing out tamers. The core of this deck is the tamer, Manoa Bellucci. This is your standard set to free memory tamer, but with huge upsides for the strategy. Anytime you would play an Eosmon, you can look at the top 3 cards of your deck, and you could either add a tamer card that was white, or a Digimon with Eosmon in its name. This effect alone becomes a huge resource engine for the deck. Speaking of Eosmon, I think it's time we talk about the card that made this deck truly unique for its time. The level 5 Eosmon introduced a brand new rule mechanic that hasn't been seen before in the Digimon card game up to this point. This rule meant that you're allowed to play up to 50 copies of this card. Usually in the card game you can only play 4 copies of each card, but Eosmon allows you to play 50 of them, although I wouldn't recommend it. But that's not all this level 5 Eosmon can do for this strategy. It also had the unique effect of when attacking being able to play any level 5 or lower Eosmon from your hand for free. This is the main combination card you use with Manoa Bellucci to then play a guy, get a search with Manoa and continue the cycle. However, the issue here is that you still need to find a way to play Manoa Bellucci for free. But luckily for us, the level 4 Eosmon does just that. Level 4 Eosmon allows us to play any white tamer for free, but it also has the downside of allowing your opponent to play a tamer for free. Now, back in BT6, sure, I guess it's okay, but in today's metagame, let's just say this is probably one of the worst things that you can do. There are obviously other cards in this strategy, such as the level 3 Morphomon that came out in BT6, which allows you to, on deletion, look at the top 5 cards, add a Manoa Bellucci and 1 card with Eosmon in its name. However, even in BT6, this was still considered slow because stuff like Huckmon from BT6 did the job way better. But obviously this built into a huge boss monster, which was the Eosmon level 6. This allows you to put Eosmons from your trash underneath the Eosmon level 6, depending on how many tamers are in play, both yours and your opponent's. Then if you put 2 underneath, you're able to delete 1 Digimon of your choice. Also has the additional effect for every 3 Digievolution sources that you have underneath your level 6 Eosmon, you gain security attack +1. Overall, this card is obviously designed to be the huge boss monster it was supposed to be in the Digimon movie. Unfortunately, this deck was never meta and wasn't even considered rogue at the time. It was just way too slow, and unfortunately other decks in the format, such as Gabu Bond, Jesmon and other decks were just way more powerful than this could ever be, essentially making it redundant from the start. It did get some future support though in BT7, where we got another level 6 Eosmon, which did nothing really, and then we also recently got the Promo Morphomon, which is a really good card, searches and also allows you to play a Manoa Bellucci for free, but it also feels like it's for a strategy that isn't out yet. Now, why did this mediocre, unreliable, overall bad strategy become my favorite? Well, when I started playing the Digimon card game, it was around BT5 Battle of Omni and BT6 Double Diamond, and I was really looking forward to this set. There are a lot of cards that I thought were quite interesting, but for some reason, Eosmon always caught my eye. I think the one thing that really stuck with me with this deck was the artwork. When I look at this artwork and what my perception of Digimon at that time was, I thought it was quite beautiful and had this weird mishmash of being very organic, but also being this like cybernetic, futuristic Digimon that it was. And quite frankly, I fell in love with it. It's something that really spoke to me. and I hope that I get to relive that when all the new support comes out in BT17 Secret Crisis, because I can't wait to fall in love with this deck again. But until that comes out in BT17 in a few months' time. Alright, so we are here at the locals that I go to pretty much every week at this point, and I'm going to be giving Eosmon one last chance before the new BT17 support comes out, which is, it's not great, but hey, at least it's something. We've got a pretty big crowd today, around like 10 people, which is quite nice, but before we get into some gameplay footage, let me showcase you my version of the deck, which is a bit rough, but I feel like at this point there isn't really like a definitive build for this deck, because let's face it, it's not a good deck. Alright, so I've given pretty much an explanation of the deck already, so I'm just going to quickly go over the cards for you guys now. 4 Argomon and 1 Pinamon. Getting into the main deck now, and we play 4 BT6 Morphomon, 4 of the promo Morphomon, and then 4 Ukomon promo. Going into level 4s, we only play 4 BT6 Eosmon. We've got 4, 8, and 12 Eosmon level 5, and then 4 BT6 level 6 Eosmon. 1 Quartzmon, 2 Defexmon, 3 Analog Youth, 4 Louis promo, 4 Manoa Bellucci, and then rounding off with 4 Cutting Edge. And that's the version of the deck that I'm playing tonight. Yeah, it's kind of iffy if I'm being honest, but honestly, we'll take any cards that we can that are support. Unfortunately, as it being a white archetype, it has a lot of downsides, quite frankly. So yeah, it's just figuring out what is the best version, and I think currently this is somewhat close to that. Right, so let's get into the locals. This is round 2, but in my round 1, I actually won against Wargreymon due to the Quartzmon having Quartzmon in both games, essentially locking my opponent up and essentially controlling the game through that. So in round 2, a bit of a different story, unfortunately. My opponent here is going to be playing the brand new, well, I wouldn't say brand new, but the better, improved Magnamon Vmon deck that has been kind of rampant. What you'll realize very quickly in this matchup is that I don't stand a chance. If any deck essentially has any sort of rush mechanic, chances are I'm gonna have a really bad time. And just him, by playing like 2 bodies out and then going into a Magnamon and then constantly doing that every turn essentially, is problematic enough for me. The problem here as well is that I'm not getting any value from my Eosmons as well. So if I swing with my Morphomons, they'll just get blocked. If I swing with my Eosmons, they'll just get blocked. And essentially, there is no out to this. The out for most situations would be playing out the level 6 Eosmon to delete a Digimon. But unfortunately, all the armors have armor purge, which means the Vmon stay alive, which means they can just go into another Magna on the following turn. So that's what ends up happening in this game 1 and game 2 with my opponent. Essentially, I'm not able to apply any pressure whatsoever because I'm having to dig through my deck quite a lot, and my opponent can play on a low memory curve throughout this whole deck and gain loads of advantages by drawing through the Vmon promo and other cards in the deck. So I lose this matchup 2-0. It was so nice, I had to do it twice. Well, unfortunately, my opponent is also going to be playing Armor Rush Vmon, and yeah, not a good time for me for all the reasons I explained in my round 2 matchup, unfortunately. But hey, maybe we could do something. The opponent that I am playing against is still pretty new. Well, I wouldn't say new, he's returning to the game, so he might not, I don't think he has all the cards for his deck, as you can see with the starter deck Vmon, but either way, I think this is still going to be a big issue for me, because essentially as he goes into those Magnamons, I'm not going to be able to swing with my Eosmons, not going to be swinging with my Warphomons, because they're all just going to get blocked, which really does suck. And as I'm always giving my opponent a lot of memory every time,
yeah, it's not going to work out at all. My opponent has no idea what my cards do, so there's that, surprise element for me potentially, but in reality, it's going to be a world of pain for me. So, just constantly getting pressure off with the VMon jammings and going into Magma to, unsuspend again, swing again, and gain lots of advantage that way. And because of that, I essentially lose game 1, and so going into game 2, I didn't really feel very hopeful at all, just due to the fact that, let's face it, I can't really deal with rush decks at all, but he is playing a little bit more slower than my last opponent, but I don't think that really matters, and it showed because I still lose game 2, ending the tournament 1 win, 2 losses.
Now, something that I actually didn't mention earlier was the fact this deck actually has quite a lot of sentimental value. It's not only the design that I like or the fact that it was my first major deck in this card game, it has quite a huge meaning for me just due to the fact that it was something that me and my friend worked on together. My friend, who has no experience with card games and we're just coming out of the first lockdown here in the UK, he was like, I want to play a card game, and I've been watching Digimon. I want to play the Digimon card game. And at that point I was quite excited because my friend never played a card game essentially. And so I got really into it, and both me and my friend essentially brought boxes of BT5 Battle of Omni and BT6 Double Diamond. And one of the things that struck a chord with me straight away with BT6 Double Diamond was the artwork for Eosmon. And because of my friend, I would have never been able to discover this card game, let alone Eosmon as a deck as a whole. So this strategy as a whole actually has a lot of sentimental value to me. So even though this deck isn't good, I don't think it's going to be good in the future either, it still holds a special place for me. And I think that's the most important thing when it comes to loving a Digimon deck. The way I've titled this video is kind of something that you already know the answer to. Yes, of course you can love a terrible Digimon deck, because we all have our reasons. We all have reasons why those decks are special to us. Eosmon is always going to be my first deck, my favourite deck, until they print better Dark Knight cards. But yeah, this deck holds a special place in my heart, in my memories of this game, and yeah, I'll always love it. You can always love a terrible Digimon deck.